All right, what's in store? 8 compositions coming up. Everything seascapes, beaches, ocean, boats, you name it. Everything coastal kind of scenes, techniques, and methods that you'll use. So these are the paintings coming up. 8. Let's see. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So get ready, get yourself prepped, get your paints, your brushes, and we'll get started in just a second. We're going to have a lot of fun, okay? Let's go. All right, so we just saw that finished compositions, and I'm going to spritz the palette here. We can get started with our first few compositions here. Again, we're doing everything coastal, ocean, beach. My favorite techniques and methods for coastal type scenes, nautical scenes, ocean, boats, beaches. The first thing I'll do is, I think one of my favorite things, you probably see me use this occasionally here and there. We're going to do it right now. I'm going to take some drafting tape, and I'm going to just trim a piece long enough to fit into the first section here that we have sectioned off. So we have 4 sections here in our paper, roughly equal divisions. And then what I'll do is I'm going to say we'll keep the ocean horizon line maybe a little bit like in the lower third. So maybe not, maybe if this is halfway, we'll go a little bit lower, like that. And then we'll make our ocean horizon line right across there where the bottom of the tape is. So when I put down my tape, I press the bottom here. I'm not too worried about up here, just as long as this is nice and snug down to the paper. And I'm using Fabriano paper, rough paper, extra white rough. And I buy the large sheets, the full-size sheets, and I just trim them down as I need them. And we have some fresh, clean water and a water bucket over here to the right. I leave it to the right. I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you probably would keep your water container on your left side. I'm right-handed, so I keep it on my right side. And then my palette's over here on the left. Typically, if I work like in a seated position, I'll usually have my palette in my left hand. So that's why I leave my palette over here, because I'm used to holding my palette in my left hand and working with my palette like this. And then I go over to my water on the right-hand side. So that's kind of my workflow for my paintings. And then here I'm on my art table. So I'm standing on my art table here, and I have my camera, of course, up overhead here. And that's my video setup here. Standing, table's pitched a little bit. Or actually, my board is pitched a little bit. I have about maybe... I have a 2x4 underneath my masonite board. So I have a masonite board underneath that. I have a 2x4 up top here, up at the very, very top of the board. Construction paper, of course, on top of my board, so it looks presentable here for the video. And that's about it, really. And then we'll just use some standard round brushes here. I have a few. There's the round brush that comes with the set here, the Prang Oval 16 set, and then some sable brushes, round brushes. They're all round brushes, so we'll just use the round brushes. And let's see, for this here, we don't even need to really do any pencil drawing for this first one. We're just going to use this as our horizon line for our ocean. So we'll go right away, spritz a little bit of water onto our paints to activate them. And that's what's great about these Prang Oval 16 set, the Prang paints. They're good for practice, and you know, if you're just starting out. So if you're just starting out with watercolor, perfect. You know, this is the perfect kind of set to buy. You kind of can get used to the painting process, and you're not like having to worry about squeezing out tubes of paint and all that. But once you start to work after a little while, maybe 6 months or something like that, or you know, when you feel up to it, then you start to get some paints, some better paints, you know, tube paints. But this is fine, your Prang Oval 16 if you're just starting out. But I like using this anyway, just for fun exercises like this. I usually have a tissue in hand all the time to dry off a little bit of the water off my brush. When I rinse my brush off, I usually, first thing I do is go over to my tissue, dry off a little bit of the water, and then I come into my palette and get my colors I'm going to use. So here we're going to use some darker blue. I'll take this blue here, which is kind of like a French ultramarine blue, cobalt blue kind of a feel, and then maybe a little more of this kind of more cerulean looking blue, and then we're going to go with some green, some red orange, and some brown. More blue. So that's a nice greenish blue, rich dark blue. And then what we'll do is we'll go across here for that distant ocean. And you just go right across where the tape is. Up top here. And that is going to be looking really nice. And then we'll take some more of that blue over here. Mix a little bit of that green into the blue so that it's kind of like a nice soft transition. But now we're just going to get that ocean feel, right? Some waves crashing in, some of those white, the foam on top of the waves coming in. You can go across like this. You can even get a little bit darker if you want, a little more of that blue and brown and green, like that. More of the green and the blue. And you could add a little more dark to that top of that, very, very top where the tape is, like that. You could also take a little bit of that dark and kind of maybe make a few bits of dark within these lighter blues. And then from there, we lighten up even more over here. And again, look at that. We're starting to get that really beautiful transition of the darker to lighter waves coming in. And then since this is rough paper, you can see how you can get some really nice, by just using more of a drier brush, not as much paint, and you just drag your brush over like on the side here, and you can get some of that really nice like foam and waves and things coming in. And then we can also take a little bit of that same color and just do a little bit of splashing. And that just gives you the feel of the waves and the surf coming in and the splashing. Like that. And then we can lift up the tape. Now if that happens where the paint leaks under that tape a little bit, it's rough paper. So sometimes when you use rough paper, if you do put down tape, sometimes it will leak underneath like that. So there's two things you can do. If you want to, when you're putting down your tape, you can really press hard with maybe the butt end of your brush to press down that tape super tight to the paper. But I'm not sure if that would even work 100% of the time. But that could get you more of a sharper line, but you don't even have to really worry about it. If you just take some of the paint like this, we'll get some of that darker dark green. So we have green, brown, and blue, right? So that's a really super nice dark. Roll your brush around so you get a good point on the brush like so. See how we got a nice point there. And then you got to, what I like to do is I like to put my hand and rest it on the paper and then take my brush and just a little bit at a time go across and get and just make that line more, you know, sharp looking. So that's all I have to do here is just go across and kind of sharpen up that line like that. And that's a wonderful, beautiful ocean. Kind of rich, dark colors in the distance there. It's deeper in the ocean there. And then over here it's kind of like lighter looking, where it's shallow and there's waves coming in. You could put a touch of some yellow and orange for some sand, like this. Just a hint of that here, maybe. Then I rinse off my brush, dry off a little bit of the water, and I maybe just blend in that golden sand color right there. And I blend that in like that. And that's where you can start to see the sand a little bit through the transparency of the ocean water, like that. And then to finish, a little bit of sky wash. No big deal here. I take a little bit of water and pre-wet the paper with just a little bit of water. Pre-wet the paper so that it's damp, like that. And then you could take some of the same colors you have right here. Pick up a little bit of the green just to kind of, match our colors. We don't want to go with a different color now. And that may be a little bit of gold in there. And the main thing for the sky right now here is we want to work kind of quickly. We want to add that water to the paper, wet and dampen the paper a little bit in the sky. And then we pick up lots of light wash here with our brush, and then just a quick little cross like this. And then maybe just a little bit of darker variation there. And this is one thing with watercolor. The less we kind of tinker around with it, the better it's going to look. So that's one of those things with watercolor. You'll always learn this as you go. When you manipulate the watercolor less, you'll have better results. It'll look better. If we work too much and we keep adding more paint, more water, we start adding more brush strokes, we think we're going to make it look better. Sometimes the best look with watercolor is get some watercolor brush strokes on your paper and just let it be, and it'll look usually fantastic just by itself. And then here, wow, look at that, a little bit of gold. Gold always looks good at the bottom of the sky. That's where that kind of that warm feeling of the earth, in the warmth of the earth, closer to the ground, and it tends to have that orangey gold kind of color at the base of the sky always. And I wouldn't go too close to the ocean water. I'd leave a space of white paper, and then later when it dries 100%, then you can go in and touch up and add a little more of that gold right up to the edge of the water. But if we try to paint too close to that edge right now, it's still damp, that dark edge of the water. That's where we could have some problems. So it's best off leave a little bit of space. It could be more than I left here. You can kind of see. Can you see that? I left about like a small, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch. Very, very little bit of paper there. But best to probably let it go with a larger space, maybe an 1/8 of an inch. A little bit more than this if you want. But right here I touched it by accident, and you can see how it kind of started to, the green, bluish green is like kind of infiltrating into the sky. I wouldn't try to lift that up. I would just leave it like that. Sometimes it's like a temptation to go in with some paper towel or whatever and blot up a little bit, but you can do that too. But sometimes it's better just to leave it. Watercolor has some imperfections to it once in a while, so that's good just to leave those imperfections. It's not a problem at all. It adds to the excitement of it in the variation of the medium. And you can even add a couple splashes to your sky. Maybe very subtle, maybe a couple dark ones like that. But that is it. And if you find one of the splashes or two don't look good, you can lift them up with a paper towel or tissue. But that is it. A nice, beautiful ocean with that really nice crisp line across there for the distant ocean line, horizon line. Some simple waves coming in. And then we had our sky where we kind of just got something in there to look pretty good. Again, we didn't mess around too much. We just really put some water on the paper, dampen the paper a little bit, and then throw some brush strokes across there with some nice blue wash, and you have yourself a nice sky there. All right, so that's my number one favorite thing. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you'll try this a few times. We're going to move on to the next one in just a second. I'll just take a quick break, but I just want to let you know, thank you for watching. If you're brand new here and it's your first time here on my channel, I always say, hey, take a second, hit the subscribe button down on the right hand side below, subscribe. This way you don't lose a track of us. That's all. And what happens is if you just subscribe, it doesn't, you're not like signing up for anything. It's just the next time you open up YouTube in a week from now or a couple days from now, if I've made a new video, you'll see that new video on your homepage. So it'll let you know when we're creating new videos all the time, so you can work along with us. That's really all it is the subscribe button. And always, if you want to hit the thumbs up button, if you like our content here, that would be fantastic. That helps me a lot if you can hit the thumbs up button. And so we'll start to work on our next composition here next, and we'll be right back. All right, let's go for our second composition now. Let's create some ocean water. I will keep it a very light sky. Maybe what I'll do is I'll keep the ocean the same height as this here. I think it'll look good as we're working across the paper. So we'll do that. We'll keep the ocean over here. We'll keep some of the same colors here. Let's see. We've got that greenish blue. That looks pretty good. Maybe some more blue here. Always remember, spritz your paints if you have to, just to keep them moist, so that if you go in to use them, they're already pre-moistened. Maybe we'll try a little bit of this. So I'm trying to use some of the different colors in the palette here. This one here, this blue, so we can kind of use these different colors, maybe just each. And this is fine too, a little bit of that green and gold there. And that should be good. A little more orange and gold here. A little bit of orange and gold maybe. Okay. A touch of black maybe here. I might want to put a little bit of black in the sky for some kind of like that cloudy feel, like maybe a stormy cloud a little bit. So if I add a little bit of black there and I put it into the ocean, maybe just a little tiny bit of it, then it's going to kind of tie in with the rest of the painting. So I think that'll look fine if we do it that way. All right, so let's get started here. We'll get some of that blue across here. You can create your ocean horizon line like this without a pencil line, or you could use a pencil line. It's up to you. I think I'm just going to maybe take a quick ruler and go across here like this, and maybe just do a very, very faint pencil line like that. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I just did a super light pencil line there just so I can keep on track with that line. Does that make sense? This way at least, we're going to, it's easy to go off a little bit and maybe go uphill a little bit or downhill. So if we get that pencil line on there, it sort of helps us, quite a bit. And I'll just keep that. And what I'll do is I'll change up here. As I'm going across, I'm going to change the colors. So I rinse off my brush. I grab a tissue. I dry off my brush a little bit, the water off my brush a little bit so I don't have too much water on there. And then we'll just grab some of these different blues. And we just keep going. And then maybe a little bit of gold infused in a few areas. Like that. Like this. Sorry about that. Bumping into things here with my brush. Okay. Maybe a little bit of that darker blue. Now the thing is here, we have to infuse these different colors if we want to quickly. You wouldn't want to wait more than like 30 seconds. I know it's a little bit of a rush, but sometimes what happens is if you try adding in washes on top of other washes, what they call wet and wet, if you don't do it quick enough, then all of a sudden you start getting odd-looking watermarks and cauliflowers and blossoms and things like that. They call that's it's the art books. Like if we're looking at art, watercolor teaching books and things like that, or you hear other artists that are on YouTube and they talk about blossoms and blooms and things like that. All that is just awkward-looking marks if you try adding wet into wet washes when the paper's already dried too much and there's not enough time, and we've run out of time to add in more water and paint. And maybe at the end of this video we'll do a couple examples of how that happens. So right here we didn't have that happen because we went quickly to put in our extra colors to infuse a little bit of that gold into our ocean water like that. Even a little bit of that black. Like that, you can add in a little bit of that black. Just a little bit there and there, like that. And wow, that really looks good. And now we're going to leave the ocean just about that much. Not a whole lot more. I'll do a couple splashes along here like so. Okay, and then we're already looking at some beach sand. Oh, that happens too once in a while. Don't worry about it. If you drop your brush, quick, try to lift up anything you can if anything looks really bad. And then what I do now is we go across, and again, we're using this really enjoyable Fabriano paper where it's got that textured, rough texture to it, the rough surface on the paper, so you can just drag your brush across and then you get all these really beautiful fine lines. So I'm using orange and yellow just to get that sand kind of look on the beach here. I hope you're enjoying this so far. And that's really a fun way to create some really nice waves coming in and that distant ocean. And maybe now's a time where I maybe shouldn't be doing this. So that's where I would say I may get away with adding in that wash a little bit there. But better off if you want to go with a darker wash in any areas over here where the water is, you could just wait till it dries 100%, or use a blow dryer, for 5 minutes, and then come back and add another darker wash over top of it if you want. Or you can let it dry naturally for, I don't know, like a half an hour, 1 hour, you should be fine. You have to just imagine when you walk up to your painting, you touch it with your hand a little bit, and you kind of just, if you feel any dampness or something, you'd want to wait. But if you feel like it's really dry to the touch, by carefully just touching a few spots, we don't want to make any marks on our paper, but if you give it about a half an hour to an hour to dry naturally, that's fine. But in any case, we are looking pretty good here. I would say we can give this, this composition a real dramatic look, and we're going to show you how we're going to do that in just a second. So let's hang tight for a second and take a quick break, and then we're going to get into the sky and how you can make a very dramatic looking sky, looking like there might be a storm coming, or all of a sudden it's a sunny day and all of a sudden the clouds roll in, kind of like that kind of feeling, So we're trying to build some mood into our paintings too, right? So if you can kind of think of that when we're creating our compositions, we're practicing so that when we get to our finished paintings, when you're going to create a nice painting for yourself to hang up on the wall, or maybe a gift for somebody, or maybe you're going to put some paintings in a gallery. If you're just starting out watercolor painting, you're just going to be picking up all these tips and ideas and techniques and methods in watercolor and practicing them, and you'll be able to deploy them when you're working on your watercolors, and especially if you start to get to the point where you want to go out and maybe see if you can get into some competitions locally, where your local art scene where you live, or maybe there's some online things you can do. You can send in some paintings online for competitions. There's all kinds of cool stuff that goes on in the art world. We're so lucky, right? Watercolor artists, we have a lot of fun stuff that goes on, right? There's all kinds of cool things you can look up online and find out what other watercolor artists are doing. If there's competitions and art galleries and different things like this you can do locally, or even you can send in your paintings to other places around the world, or in the United States, or wherever you may be from. Okay, well, let's get started in just a second with our sky, but we're just going to take a quick break. Okay, so we're now going to create our sky. What I like to do is often I'll clean my palette often when I'm painting, as well as change out my water. So I've changed out my water now just as I'm coming back from the break. So that's also another thing I like about breaks. Usually when I take a break, I always change my water. So if I'm always taking a break like every 10, 15, 20 minutes, I'll always have my water changed out, and I'll usually clean up my palette a little bit if I think I need to. But that'll kind of be like a good thing in your mind. You tell me what you think about that. Is it a good thing? Taking a break, and it kind of reminds you to do a few things, because sometimes we can keep working and working and working, and we forget like maybe to change out the water or clean up the palette a little bit, or step back and look and check out what we're doing and come up and say, oh yeah, yeah, my painting's finished. I don't think I need to add any more details, or oh, I should add a few more things, or try to, so you can kind of like game plan when you take breaks, and this way, it would stop you from maybe putting in too much details in your painting, or it might alert you to something you didn't see before as you're walking up to it and you're standing a little further back from your painting. So a lot of cool stuff happens when we're taking breaks and walking away from our artwork and then walking back up to it again. Because, you'll see a lot of artists. Have you seen that? A lot of artists, a lot of times you see, they kind of step back from their paintings, like when they're working, or they might lean back in their chair really far to try to see if they can look at their painting from like further away. Because sometimes when you're right up close to your painting and you're working on it, you might not see something, or something might not be so obvious. But if you step back and kind of look from 3 or 4 feet away or 6 feet away, you might see something and be like, oh wow, I didn't notice that. So just a fun little tidbit of information there. And here we go. We're going to do the sky. So again, we talked about cleaning up the palette a little bit. I'm going to dip my paper towel in some water. Sometimes you don't have to clean up the whole palette. You can leave certain areas maybe with some paint if you don't think the paint is compromised too much with too many mixes and kind of starting to look muddy. And it's also according to what you like as far as your colors. You may want muddy looking colors here and there when you're painting. That's fine too. That's got a beauty of it in its own. So you just have to experiment and see what kind of looks you like in your paintings. But I'll tend to just do a quick little cleanup, nothing too fancy. I've been mixing a lot on there. We did one composition and we started another, so let's get some fresh colors. And again, we talked about let's do some black. And up here, nice, wow, that's going to look good. And what else are we going to do? Blue. And then we use this blue in our painting quite a bit, and this too as well. So for the sky color, I would use the same blues we used for the water. So that was all 3 of these blues, like 1, 2, and 3. And we also could implement a little bit of purple here. Now if I'm going to add in purple, I haven't added it in so far, so what I would do is take that purple and add a little bit there. And maybe a little bit over here. Maybe that's a cloud overhead that's putting a shadow there. But that little bit of purple is going to look good. And we'll put some in the sky too. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing we did over here. We're going to pre-wet the sky with some fresh, clean water. And again, I changed out my water. And that's always a good thing. When we change out the water, then we can get some crystal clear water on our paper. And there we go. Some really nice fresh, clean water on our paper. Now we'll take some of that black and we'll try to get a bit of a cloud in there. And for some reason there's some green in that. Maybe what I can do is sort of maybe blot up a little bit of this. See if I can get, yeah, I don't know why that is like that. So however that happened, it seems like the black is actually like a really dark green. So I'll work with it. I'll add some brown to it. Like this, and some brown to it. Maybe some blue. Try to get myself a little bit toward, yeah, that looks pretty good. So if you ever have an issue where sometimes I take out these pans and I put new ones in if I run out of color. So that could be what happened there. I'm not sure. No worries. So anyway, there we go. A nice, beautiful sky with a touch of that stormy cloud look. Like that. And then a little bit of that purple. A couple splashes of water. And that is it. Again, I think that with watercolor, the less we manipulate the paint and water, the better off we are. I have a little bit of a splotch here, which we call that. Remember we were saying how you get blossoms and cauliflowers and things like this on you? That's what happened there. A little bit of that water that I put on the pre-wet to pre-wet the paper did drip down and reactivate some of this water on the horizon line here. But no worries, you can leave that in there. That's really fine. No one's ever going to complain about that. And then once this dries 100%, well then maybe we can touch that up a little bit with some white paint. But I think we'll leave it. I think this looks fine. Some nice colors. Mixtures of colors, some cloudy, stormy kind of feel maybe, overcast, all of a sudden you're on the beach and a little rain shower comes over. No big deal, you kind of enjoy it. And then it's back to sunny weather, so let's come up with ideas like this in our minds. Let's pretend we're at the beach and we're experiencing it as we're painting. That'll kind of sometimes spark us to have a little more excitement when we're painting. All right, so we're at the beach. Wow, the ocean, the beautiful ocean, the sky, the big skies, and relaxing and hearing the ocean waves crashing in and the birds and the seagulls flying around and all the interesting people walking around everywhere and people are enjoying, relaxing. All right, let's get into that same feel as we work towards our next composition here. And so we'll take a break and then we'll get started on our third composition. Be right back. All right, so we're going to get started. Next thing I would think would be fun is actually a little bit of maybe some rocks and maybe a palm tree. So I think what I'll do is I'll create maybe a palm tree over here on the right side, just a palm tree coming out of the side over here, like so, like this. That. And palm trees have those flowing branches like that. And then maybe we'll have a few rocks over here, and there's some bushes and things. So we'll just kind of create some rock shapes like that. Like this over here. So we have some rock shapes here, and then maybe some smaller stones like that. And then maybe we'll make our ocean horizon line, maybe about a third up from the bottom, 1/3 of the way up from the bottom, like here. I actually turned my light a little bit darker. I hope you can see. I think when I turn my light down a little bit over the top of my table here, I think you can kind of see the colors a little better. I wanted you to see the subtleties of the sky washes. I think you can see that a little better now. I was looking through my viewfinder on my camera, my video camera. And so I think that will help a little bit to kind of see the variations you can really get with the nice grays and the black that we used and so forth, and the different blues and a little bit of the purple. So again, we have our distant horizon line, the ocean there, and then we'll have again some rocks over here on the left with a bit of a palm tree. So I think if we have this little bit of interesting information here, And maybe we have a few more rocks over here, like that. So we're kind of looking at a scene where we have rocks along the coast, some water coming in, the coast, the waves coming in along the coast, and we'll kind of keep this looking pretty much kind of in the same idea of the shoreline coming in. The next thing I do is I empty my water, put some fresh clean water in. Now what I'll do is I'll put the sky in first now here on this one, on this composition, so that I can paint my palm trees, which are more delicate with fine lines and things. So I'd rather go in with my sky wash first and then paint over the top with my darker tonal values of my palm branches and things like that. And if I do it on top of a lighter wash, then I don't run the risk of having the lighter wash. So if I painted the palm tree first, does this make sense? If I painted the palm tree first with fine lines and darker paint, and then I tried to go over with one of these wet washes like this, it would kind of probably reactivate and a lot of this would get smudged. So that's where with watercolor you kind of game plan a little bit ahead of time. Sometimes you're better off doing that light sky wash first if you have some trees and things like that that you're going to want to have in the scene. If you don't have anything in the scene, then you can wait till the end to paint your sky wash. That's fine. But I think if we have a palm tree or two, we'd want to wait to do the palm tree and do the sky wash first. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take that wet wash. Here again, some nice clean, fresh clean water. And pre-wet the paper, like so. And then we'll go with that. We'll go again with some of that stormy clouds here. So I'll do that. And then maybe some purple. Mix that in a little bit. Maybe some orange. That's kind of nice. Warm and cool looking. And again, if we just let the watercolor do its own magic, a lot of times it's fine. And then we'll leave some white sky there too. Some white paper. All right, that looks good. Touch of that in the water, the sky wash. And then now we'll let this dry. That's the key. Letting this dry now, because we really can't paint the palm tree unless this all dries, the sky. And then the ocean here too. When we paint these rocks, we're going to want to let that water wash that we just painted over with you know, the water is kind of picking up some of the colors of the sky. So then we have our sky wash mirroring down into the water, into the ocean water. And then that's why we actually took the sky colors and just moved them right on down into the ocean. And then now we could just let this dry 100%, and then we'll come back and we'll start painting the darker darks of this scene, which would be the rocks and the palm tree. And any other details that we might want to add. I'm just going to lift up a hair or two that I see. Okay, so let's just take a quick break. We'll let this dry, and again, if you have a blow dryer and you want to go a little quicker and move along faster, that's fine too. I might do that myself, but I will take just a quick break and then we'll be right back. Alright, so now we're just going to start to work on our palm tree to start with here, so we have some of that black and brown, a little bit of blue, a little bit of orange in there. A little bit of blue. And I'm using a finer brush now. I'm going to use the Da Vinci number 5 that comes with the Schmincke palette that I use often. It's got a really nice point there and synthetic, so it's conducive for watercolor painting, especially if we're just starting out in watercolor. If you can use synthetic brushes, it really helps a lot. One of the keys I always mention is having a paper towel or tissue to dry off your brush. So you rinse off your brush, dry off the water, come over here, pick up some water. So what we're gonna try to do is orange and yellow. We're gonna try to vary the color mixtures as we go. Rinse off, take some paint off the. So I'll try to vary the colors here a little bit of blue, gray, like this, and we just vary the colors of our palm tree, the actual trunk of the tree as it goes up, and then I'll stick with the same colors, and I'll just try to do some kind of sharp just a few dry off a little bit of the paint to get a couple of these type of looks like that. And you can make a few darker darks with the blue and the brown and the black here and there, maybe just a couple of darks. Maybe we can activate some of this blue that we used and maybe splash a few spots. So that usually can go a long way. A little bit of the gold and orange for some of the needles on the palm tree. And kind of a subtle look to it, nothing too, we're not going overboard with things, you know. You can make it kind of darker and a little more up top. Blot up a little bit if you think something doesn't look right. But that's fine. I think everything is looking pretty good. And that's fine. That tells us the story of a really nice palm tree here. And we'll pick up some more of those darks for the rocks. Brown, black, blue, maybe a touch of purple. Get all those good darks in there. And then we'll just start creating some rock shapes. A little bit of warm in the rock shapes too, so darks with a little bit of some of the orange and red just to get a... I rinse off my brush, dry off a little bit of the water, pick up some more dark over here, like this. Maybe I add a little bit of orange and yellow here. Looks pretty good. Maybe some green here. Mix with some yellow and some orange. And some more green. Maybe we have some brush over here and some plants. I'll splash a little bit on there too. Okay, and that is looking pretty good. All right, we can do a little more work with the rocks over here. Now these are going to be a little lighter. You'll see that I'm not going to be going as dark as these here. These are closest to us. As the rocks go a little bit further in the distance, they're going to be a little bit lighter, more cooler looking, bluish, maybe a little bluer looking, purple, blue, and there's some darks in there too, maybe along the bottom, but they will tend to be a little bit cooler looking since they're in the far distance here, like that. Couple more rocks over here. See if I can get a few splashes here for some smaller rocks, like that. All right, and if we wanted to, one little finishing touch we could do is add a little bit of that purplish blue here, and a little bit of that darker color there, so kind of a purple. And we dry off our brush with some of that paint, so we take off a little bit of, because we're going to do a very fine line across the distance here for that ocean. So let's make a little bit of a darker bit of where the water is out here in the distance. And it's not everywhere. Maybe you kind of skip some spots, just like that. And then maybe if you drag the brush across like this, you get some paint on the brush, dry off a little bit of the paint on the paper towel or tissue, and then you take your brush on the side and just kind of maybe do a couple of just like that to give a little bit of that shimmering water. Then I dampen the brush a little bit. And I think that looks pretty good. We could add some green in the water here a little bit, since we're going to use some of that green up here in the palm tree. I would use a little bit of the green here in the water just to tie the painting together with some of the green. Very bit of light green there. And even a little bit of green in the sky. I know people will say there's no green in the sky, but we're doing artwork here, so it doesn't have to be exactly what we're seeing in reality. And I just wanted to add some of that green up there in the sky too. And that looks good. Kind of ties everything together. Just a little tiny subtle bit of green like this in your sky wash, you'll be surprised. Your eye will actually pick that up, or someone that's looking at your painting, they're going to pick that up and they'll see it. They won't know. They're actually not really, aware that they're seeing some green up here in this sky because it's so subtle, but it does. Their mind picks it up. and then they kind of feel like, the whole painting is harmonizing the colors. So that's why I added the green in the water, which is more, that's fine. There's always, some beautiful greens in the water along the ocean. So we have that there. That's fine. So we're taking the green of the palm tree, as well as some of the plants over here, and then we're taking some of that and putting it over here. And then as well, we added some to the sky a little bit too, but just just a extreme subtle amount, but it does, someone's visual perception will pick that up. So that's why I did it, and I think you're going to enjoy this. I hope you're going to create this one too as we go. We're doing these compositions here. Take your time when you do them, obviously. Have fun with it. Enjoy. We're going to do another one, and then we're going to do another 4. So we're going to keep working through these. These are my favorite things that I do when I'm painting seascapes, beach scenes, boat scenes, stuff, anything like a coastal. These are the kind of things that I always do on a constant basis. So whatever I'm kind of doing here, you can rest assured you're going to see that whenever I'm creating something like a painting that's got the coastal feel to it. All right, so we'll start another one in just a second. Just going to take a quick break. All right, so let's start a sand dune. I cleaned up my palette a little bit while we were away for a break, and now I think I'll start our sand dune over here. And then maybe we're going to have some weeds and grasses and things like this over here. Then over here the sand is going to slope on down like this. And then over here we're going to have another bit of green grasses and weeds and things like this over here. We're going to keep it simple. And then out here in the distance, we'll create our ocean horizon line. I'll use a ruler. This is a T-square ruler. I could always put it on the edge of my paper over here. Or I can just do it by eye here, according to what we're doing on the camera. And the rest of our, like that. So that'll be our horizon line for our ocean, the distant ocean there, and then some waves coming in here, and we'll have a nice light easy sky. Okay, so just some rough sketches of where the grasses are going to be and the weeds and so forth, and some plants on both sides over here, maybe a few more too over here, let's say behind this. Maybe we'll do a few over here too. And that should be good. And let's use our medium-sized brush. I'll empty my water again. I'm always emptying my water. Fresh, clean water can't hurt anything. And I would say for this painting, we'll probably go with the sky first. We'll do sort of like the glazing technique. So we're going to we'll do the glazing method, which is lights first all the way across the whole painting, and then we'll come back in and start doing some of the darker glazings over the top, the darker tonal values, just like we did this one here. We did the lights first, then we went over that with our darker glazings, our palm tree and rocks and bushes and plantings and so forth, and some of our darker ocean colors. So we'll just stick with what we did here, the glazing method. I'll put a little bit of that fresh, clean water in the ocean area as well as the sand area. So we're going to try to take a little bit of that sky color and repeat it down into the sand and the ocean. And again, we're going to go with some really nice light blue. Maybe we'll just do a touch of orange to that, just to neutralize it a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, and then again, as we were saying, if we just let the watercolor do the work for us, we'll be okay. So I just put some of that water and paint onto the page, onto the sky area. And then maybe a little bit of some orange and yellow at the bottom. Very little though. Rinse off the brush, and then I shake off the water off the brush, and then we add a little bit of the orangey yellow for the bottom of the sky. Okay, we'll leave that white paper up there. You can always blot out a little bit of clouds if you want to with some tissue. So don't be afraid to blot up a couple of clouds, or blot in, I should say, a couple of clouds if you want. Like that. And then we're going to reflect that same bit of color here in the ocean a little bit. Some of that blue, very, very light bits of blue in the sand. And again, this is just the first glazing, so we have more to do. So that's why I'm just putting a little bit of that blue in the sand area. And that'll be like our underpainting, our underglazing for our sand color that goes over the top of that. And we can, for our sand color, we can use, again, some of the yellow, orange, a little bit of brown, a little bit of brown, a little bit of the blue in there too. And that should be good. So we'll kind of prep, making a little bit of our sand color. And again, this one's kind of going to go pretty quickly and pretty easily because we're really keeping this one really light, like a light feel. Lots of bright sky, light sand, and more of the darker tonal values will be the greens, the weeds and the grasses and things. So we'll develop it as we go, but we can kind of see already that things are going well. So now it's just either blow drying this off or letting it dry for about an hour until you can touch it and feel like there's no wetness to it at all, and it's pretty much dry to the touch. And so we'll do that. I think I'm going to use the blow dryer, and we'll keep working at a quicker pace. So that's for me on my end. So we'll see in a second or two. Alright, so now we're going to get started with our darker tonal values on our sand dunes and our grasses and weeds and things here. So let's take some of that blue that we were using, some green, brown, orange, yellow, kind of a mixture of some yellow up there, maybe some blue. And again, if you need some water, you can spritz some water on your paints to activate them again. Alright, some dark greens, some lighter greens here, and then even some more yellowish green here. Okay, and then we're just going to go in and so I'm using my number 5 travel brush here. And we're just going to do some quick, fun, carefree weeds and things and grasses. I'm not going to get too involved with tons of details or anything like that. We're just kind of doing this composition so we can kind of see how we're building our seascapes and things. So there's just a little bit of. We're going to use some darker First, here we go with some darker tonal values. I would leave some white paper here and there on the undersides of where the weeds and grasses are, like that. So you can kind of see I left some white paper. And I've just started the, like kind of the bunches of the grass and so forth and the weeds. And then we'll use a finer point brush to get a little more detail for the grasses and weeds. So I'll take my needlepoint brush and we'll get some of the greens again going here. And these, I think we're going to have sort of a and you can get some darker green if you want, with some blue, and so the thing would be to kind of change the tones, the tonal values and colors of your grasses and weeds. So we just wouldn't want to use one wash or one mix. We'd want to mix things up a little bit, change the colors around just a little bit as we go. A couple go up straight like this. A lot of them are the wind is going this way. So we're just going to take our brush and kind of wisp it to the right. So the winds mostly are going to this way here. And then you'll have a few weeds that are kind of straight like that. And that should be pretty good. But we still want to get some darker darks. Purple is nice. Purple is nice for some of the darks in here. So I would do some purple with a little bit of the green and brown to kind of get some darks in there. Those mysterious darks that are like the deep shadows. I think we will have a good bit of success with this if we just stick with the like that. And we can make a little more we could have a few bits of like other plants and things in here too. It doesn't have to all be just the weeds. You can add some plants and things if you like to. It's your painting, you can get more creative with it, do things different than I'm doing. I'm just trying to get the basics of it. Like this. And then what I'll do is we will want to add some shadowing here. So what I'll do is we'll pretend, or we're going to say that the sunlight's coming this way from the left over here going this way. So we're going to have some shadows down here on the sand. But before we put those shadows in, we're going to put the sand color on first and let that dry, and then put the shadow color on top of the sand color. So right now, we just had a little bit of blue on the sand dune here, these sand dunes. Now we'll go in and we'll put some sand tones in sand color. But first, let's just do a quick cleanup of our palette. Just for, actually, I have a spot here open, so let's do this. And we'll take some again, that brown and yellow and orange. Brown, yellow, orange. Kind of that golden sand color. And a little bit of water. So I got some water there. And then, and I wouldn't put it everywhere. I wouldn't completely cover the whole sand dune with color, with the sand color. I would leave white paper too. Kind of gives it a nice feel of okay, so so I left some white paper there. You can blot up a little bit too if you have too much water on there, let's say, and you want to lighten it up a little. But that should be fine. Now what we'll do is we'll let this dry once again. We'll come back, we'll put some shadows on this sand, on these sand dunes here from the plantings and the grasses and weeds and so forth, and that'll be done. It'll really look good once we get those shadows going. We'll use some purple for the shadows, some blue and some purple, and we'll use the same blue we used in the sky, and then we'll add some purple to that, and that should be looking really good. All right, so we'll come back in just a minute. We'll let this dry. I'm going to use the blow dryer, and we'll get back working again. All right, before we get our sand textures and shadowing from the weeds and grasses and things, let's get the ocean colors in there. Let's take some more of that blue. I might need to clean the spot off again. Don't be afraid to take your palette and just, as you go, as you're working through your painting, you're pretty much, you know, you're keeping track of your colors as you work. So no worries there, you're going to be mixing the same colors. And then we'll use some blue. Some darker blue. Some orange to neutralize that a little bit. Let's see what we have here. Okay, I'm going to go right back there. And I'm carefully just going across that pencil line we created. We created that pencil line in the distance for that distant shore ocean line. And once we get that in, we take our brush, we rinse off our brush, we dry off a little bit of the water on a tissue or paper towel. And we're just going to do the same thing that we were doing before in our different compositions here as we've been going, is we're just trying to get that. We could take the brush and drag it on the side to get some of that broken feel of the paper, the rough paper and the water, some light shimmering on the water. And we want to see that water going across here behind these plantings and weeds and things and these grasses. That looks good. And as you can see, as it gets closer to us, the ocean, maybe it's a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, who knows. Usually it's darker out here in the ocean like that. And then we have a little bit of lighter like that. Okay, looks good. Now we can take some purple mixed in with these other colors that we had, the orange, the brown, or for the blue actually it was the two blues. A little bit of orange to neutralize and some purple. Okay, so now we have a good shadow color. And then we're going to make this shadow color right here on some of this. Quickest way to get these shadows in is just very, almost haphazardly. You just kind of do a little bit of shadowing like this with this brush. And we're going to use a fine point brush too for some of the finer. And the shadows are not extremely long. So this would be like in the middle of the day. If it was like in the afternoon, like late in the afternoon or early in the morning, these shadows might go all the way out in the sand, all the way over here. But since we're going to, in our mind, we're going to say the sun is more higher in the sky right now, the shadows will not be as long. The cast shadows will just be sort of underneath these for the most part. A little bit out, but not too far. And there we go. We have that there, a little bit there. Then we'll take our needlepoint brush, load it up with some water, purple, blue and purple, a touch of orange to neutralize it. And then we can just get a little bit of the fine just a few for the indications of those shadows like that. And then you can make the shadows a little darker with more purple. A little bit of orange to, again, neutralize it a little bit. But you can make them darker in there like this. That usually is the case. You'll see darker shadows in the deeper into the where the grasses and weeds are. That's where the light is not, can't make it into there that far. So that is where you'll see your darker shadows. You can even do some bits of some weeds and grasses too, like that. But that is really this over here might have a little bit of shadow there. Not too much though. That's on the other side of the sand dune, so we're not going to see much shadow over there. And what we can do is finish up with a little bit of speckles of sand. We could take some orange and yellow mixed with that purple, and then we can take another brush and just do some very light tapping to get some of the sand feel like that. And then we can also take a little more for a couple larger splashes if we want. Some sand too, that sand color. And that is it. So we are looking good here. I like this. It looks very pleasant looking. The sand colors, the ocean colors, the blue sky colors, the greens of the weeds and the grasses and things. I think this came out really good. And the shadows look really nice too. So let us get ready for another 4 paintings. We're just started actually. We're halfway there anyway. So we're going to do these first 4 compositions obviously. And then I'll reset up my paper again. We'll do another 4. And it's all going to be on the theme of like my favorite type of things I do for landscapes. I should say seascape paintings, anything ocean, beaches, water, boats. We'll do maybe a couple boats next too. Maybe just a couple simple sailboats. We'll do a few other things, but I'll do some of my favorite, type of techniques and methods that I use all the time with my, again, my seascape paintings. All right, we'll see you in just a second. All right, so we have a nice, fresh, clean sheet of paper. We sectioned it off just like we did the first. And again, these are my 8, 8 of my kind of like some of my favorite things I like to do with seascapes and ocean and beach, coastal type scenes. And what I wanted to do next is actually, I want to kind of make things more simplified on these next 4. So the first 4 we did, we worked a little, we put a lot of effort into things. We kind of took our time, I would say that's usually my style, but sometimes it's really fun just to kind of go at a little bit faster pace and kind of just, let's say, get some ideas down. So now that's why I want to kind of have everybody that's kind of, if you're subscribed, awesome. If it's your first time here, again, please subscribe. Stick with me here and stick with all of us. We've all been here for many years now on YouTube. I've been on YouTube over like probably 6 or 7 years now. Full time, creating videos every week after week, month after month, and year after year. So if you're just working along with us each week, you're going to improve your skills with watercolor incredibly. So that's why I mentioned if you subscribe on the right-hand side below, you're with us, no matter if you've just been painting a few weeks or a year, or if it's your first time here and you never painted before. Have a great time. Just go with the flow, enjoy it, pick up what you can as you go, and you'll just get better every time you get together with us here, each time we get together on the tutorials here on YouTube. So no worries about that. You have a good time. You enjoy the journey. I always say that. You see me always, typing into my comments, enjoy the journey, because that's what it is. It's having fun, just realizing that it takes time and it's just a journey. You just keep going. You just keep walking, or if it was, if you were on horseback, you'd be just continuing on horseback to keep going, or if you're in a car or a vehicle, or if you're in a plane or a jet or whatever it is, you're going, and you just keep going and moving forward. And that's all it is. If you're going forward, sometimes you're going to go off on, sometimes the path is not going to be always straight. Sometimes, if things get difficult, you might not have a straight path as you would like to get better, but in any case, don't let it discourage you at all. Watercolor is not easy too. I know there's some people say that watercolor is easy. It's not. It just takes consistent time and effort. That's all it is. Just coming here week after week and practicing along with us, and simplifying it on your end too. If we're doing a complicated painting 1 week, or every once in a while we're doing something more complicated, you just take one part of what we're doing and just maybe do one facet of it. Like if we're painting a large landscape painting with a bunch of trees and mountains and a lake and all this other stuff, right? Just take maybe one tree and a little bit of the lake and just do a small composition of it. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to kind of take the concept of, you don't always have to paint a large full-size painting with all the parts in it. You could take smaller parts of things and just do those, especially if you're just starting out, or if you're a couple years into it and you just can't work, everyone's busy. I know many of you are very busy with your personal lives and you can't maybe practice as much as you would like, and that's understandable. So no worries. Let's get the idea of, let's do like a sailboat idea here. So we'll just take maybe, and I'll just do a quick pencil line like that. Sometimes when we're doing sails for sailboats, they kind of look good if we kind of do the quick motions like this. So I'm doing a couple quick motions here, like that. Maybe another smaller sail alongside that one, like this. Same thing there. Okay, so we have our sailboat there. Maybe we have another one next to it. So we'll say another one is here. And this one's more diminished over here. Like that. Okay, 2 sailboats. Real simple, quick. Basic shapes. Bow of the boats. Stern's more straight, bow is more angled. So if you can imagine the bows of the boat, usually the front of the boat has more of a steeper angle on it. Stern of the boat usually is more straight. There's just a little bit of a angle to it. And the same thing over here, the bow of this boat is more like this, on an angle like that. And then the stern on this here is, it's not straight, but it's a little bit turned like this. But you can see how this one's much more angled like that. So if we just take these quick couple things like that, and there we have it. Okay, we have our mast, our booms here, and we could bring these down closer to the boat. Usually these are closer to the, like that. Perfect. Now we're along the beach here, so let's do some sand. I'll just take a quick bit of sand here. So we'll put the line of the sand in here, and then we have some water. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a distant ocean there. Like maybe we're in a bay, a beautiful bay, maybe some rolling hills in the background like this, and then the rest will be sky, and maybe we'll have a few other boats over here. In the distance we'll put just a couple smaller boats like this, a couple sailboats over here like that, maybe a few over here too, maybe one in the water over here, another sailboat over there. like that. All right, perfect. Again, quick, easy. Let's get some water on here and paint. I'll empty my water bucket again. Fresh, clean water. And again, we're going to have a really enjoyable time. We're going to use a lot of the same colors we've been using. So now you're kind of warmed up. We've worked on 4 compositions already, so you're kind of used to some of the colors we've been using. Again, we're using the Prang Oval 16 set. We're using this blue, which is kind of like a cerulean blue if you're used to working with like my normal palette that I work with all the time, my Schminke palette with all my standard colors. You'll notice that these colors are all similar to what I use normally, except they're just a different brand. The Prang Oval 16 set. But let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. Nice and light. So we'll just go with that light blue first, and then also some sand color, which is the brown, yellow, and orange. And again, we're making that sand color. Can't go wrong with that, with a little bit of that blue mixed in there too. Okay. Now we're going to take our brush and wet the paper for the sky. So I'm putting fresh, clean water on the sky. And what I'm doing is I'm going to go around the sails. So paint up to the edge of the sail. But don't paint over that sail, the white sail. We're going to keep and you saw the paintings in the beginning, so that's a fantastic thing. You get to see what the paintings actually look like when they're finished, so you can refer back to that. And also, too, I wanted to mention at the end of the video, I'm going to take each one of these compositions we did, all 8, and put them each one at a time on camera, on the video, for like maybe 30 seconds each. And this way you can actually stop your camera and pause. And then you can pause on any one of these paintings and paint right from the actual finished painting, which is the best way to actually paint watercolor. If you're learning watercolor, your absolute best path to success is painting from watercolor paintings. Eventually, when you get really good and you're really, getting some real good success and some where you really feel comfortable, where you think you're kind of really comfortable with watercolor, then you can, paint anything. You can paint from pictures and, still life, and go outdoors and paint. You could do that anyway but you'll learn a lot if you paint from watercolor paintings. I shouldn't say you should just paint from those alone. But yeah, have fun and paint from watercolor paintings, because you really learn a lot when you do it that way, for sure, because you're actually trying to copy exactly what you're seeing. So you'll be almost forcing yourself to learn how to get that look of the watercolor. All right, we've wet the paper and we've painted around our sails so that we didn't paint into those sails. And then I put a little bit of, in between there, a little bit of the water. And then we let the watercolor do its magic. A little bit of brown in there to neutralize that blue. And again, I wouldn't mix and mix and mix and mix this color. I would put a little bit of brown in there, in the blue, just to give it a little bit of a... And there we go. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to go right everywhere with the blue. We can blot up a little bit of where the sand is. But this is the game plan here. And it's usually much darker at the top of the skies, so you can always add more color to the top of the sky here. And then the sky gets lighter as it moves down. You can blot in a few clouds if you like. Or put some lightness in there. Okay, and that is it. And then maybe we can rinse off our brush, dry off a little bit of the water, and then maybe you could add just a little bit of shadow to a couple spots on the sails over here and there, like that. All right, that is good. Now the next thing, we just let this dry. You can use a blow dryer, of course, or let this dry naturally, and then we'll come right back and we'll finish up, because it's really going to be a kind of a fast painting, a fast composition. And you can blot up if there's any puddles. Okay, we'll be back in a second. All right, we'll use the blow dryer, dry to the touch. I'll spritz the palette. Okay, and then we're going to move right along here. Let's get some of that brown and blue. Brown and blue, maybe a little bit of purple. A little bit of orange. A little bit of blue in there. Okay, and then let's get our sailboats here. Okay, maybe this one's a little lighter. All right, we are looking good. Okay. A little bit of purple. Dry off the purple on there like this. See if we can get a distant mountain back here. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit of green in there. And then when we start to add in some of these other colors, we have to remember we have to try to go back in and add them somewhere else. Okay, so we got those further mountains back here, hills that are we can take a little bit of that dark brown, load some on the brush, dry off a little bit on a paper towel, tissue, and then we just get a couple of these dark bits of the seal here. Okay, and maybe these, sometimes when we're creating paintings, we don't always make everything exactly perfect. As far as maybe someone that's out there that does sail a lot, they might look at some of the parts to our sailboats here and think, well, it doesn't always look like it makes sense 100% with maybe the way the mast looks or something like that. But we're just trying to do some fun practice, and I guess the thing here is we're trying to do some speed painting, right? We're trying to get some speed going, quick work in here. So again, I'm doing some distant sailboats here, like that. Just a couple indications of some sailboats here in the distance, like that. That looks pretty good. Some of the sand color here, orange. Okay. I dampen the brush. Okay. Maybe there's a few stripes along this here. And maybe there's a orangey red design on one of the sails, like that. There. A little bit of that green. I think we needed to add a little bit of that green in here. Just a little bit. There is some green in there. That I think it was just the colors that we mixed. Actually, there was some greens that kind of got mixed in there. All right, perfect. Look at that. Nice and quick and easy. You can add some figures in there. We'll put some figures in quick. Couple of figures in here. I just usually put the head and shoulders like this. Maybe there's somebody who might have on a different color shirt, so we'll have somebody over here. Over here, maybe another person over here, like this. Okay, and then we'll do a little bit of red for the faces, orange and red. A little bit of yellow, orange, red, and yellow for the complexions. I dry off a little bit of the paint so I don't have too much paint on there. And there we go. A couple of complexions there. And that is it. All right, so we got this completed pretty quickly. A lot of gorgeous color in there, a lot of water and paint. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we're going to maybe do another, maybe we'll do some, well, actually we'll change it up a little bit. You'll see when I come back, we're going to change this one up a little bit. So we did boats here, we'll do something a little different. All right, here we go. Let's create ourselves a distant shoreline across here like so. And you can use a ruler, of course, if you like. I'm going to do this freehand here across. Then I'm going to create a kind of a rolling hill back here, and then maybe something like this, just a bit of a mountain in the distance like that. Okay. And then there's going to be more hills here in the, so this distant mountain in the back is that larger mountain, and then we're going to have some smaller hills in the foreground here like that, and some shoreline. And we're also going to have a boat. Let's call this a sailing ship, a sailing boat, I should say, like a steamboat. Not so much a steamboat, a ship, a fishing vessel, or a maybe a tugboat of some sort, just something simple like that. So I'll put that on the paper like so, just a little indication of a boat, kind of the same shape as we did over here, you know, kind of a steeper bow, and then the stern's kind of straighter like that, and then it's a little bit of a cabin on top of the boat. Maybe there's a smokestack on top of that. And this is going to, again, be a really fun painting. We're just going to get some really gorgeous washes on here. What I'll do is we're going to do the same idea. But first, let's take some paper towel and just let's start fresh again. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to start like that. And again, I'll spritz my paints just quickly, not too much, just enough to activate the paint, a little bit on the top. And then we will have fresh, clean water. So what we'll do is the glazing method once again. First wash, we wet the paper with fresh, clean water right across. Doesn't have to be everywhere, especially in the sky. You can kind of, with the sky, you can hit and miss your, you can add water here and there in your sky when you add that fresh water. You can leave some places where there's dry paper left up top on your sky. And then as we come down, I would cover the whole mountain, and as well, I'd cover the whole water area here. Like this. So this could be a river or a bay or the ocean. So I've got that all covered 100%. But the sky I left a little bit hit and miss. Now, when you have your water on there, like so, we'll come over here and we'll mix up some purple and brown. And that brown kind of neutralizes the purple a little bit. You can also use orange to neutralize the purple. We'll use some blue. Like that. Up here we'll use some orange. Like this, so we'll have... Those are the two colors we're going to really want to kind of focus on. And blue, too, as well. Blue here. This will be a little more subdued. We won't use that really bright blue, that cerulean type blue like this. We'll keep these colors a little more subdued. Maybe a little bit of that blue, but not much. Alright, that looks pretty good. So more of a purplish blue, like a regular standard cobalt blue or French ultramarine blue, and then some orange and brown, like that. And now we have our paper with lots of water on there, like this. And now we'll just take this and let it do its magic. The less I fuss with the paint, the better off I'm going to be. So I'm just going to kind of like basically just kind of throw it on the paper there a little bit. And that is it. Simple as that. You can go in quickly. You have time to go in quickly here and add a little bit of orange across this bit here. Maybe a little more purple down here too. But I think that should be fine. And we let that go. We let this dry. You can blow dry this, of course, speed up the process, or you can let this dry naturally for half an hour, 45 minutes. Depends too. If you have a very warm room you're working in, it'll dry quicker. If you're working in a cooler room with air conditioning on or something like that, or it's winter time and it's a little cooler, it dries slower. But that is going to be just right. The washes look good. Let these dry, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up with our mountain, a little more details with the boat, and that is it. All right, here we go again. Let's get our second wash, our second glazing going here. And again, let's practice some good technique here, keeping our palette tidy. Let's do that. We know the colors we used here, very limited palette. You know, we use purple, orange, brown. So then we're just going to kind of, let's use the same colors again. Purple, brown, orange, a little bit of blue. Like that, maybe a little more blue. Like that. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little more orange. Alright, so now second glazing, darker tonal values. We're going to create this distant mountain here. And that should have maybe some more purple in it. So let's do that. Let's add some purple to this distant mountain. But it's not so like distant, let's say. Dry off a little bit of the water, pick up some of that. And also too, we can, with this distant mountain here, we're going to paint around that boat, that fishing boat there. You're going to want to change this mountain as you go, like the tonal values of it, as well as the colors. So one of the fun things I always kind of think about with watercolor is changing your colors and tonal values all the time, even if it's just a little bit as you go across this area here. If you can get some changes in there. There's a little bit of some purple there, maybe some orange to... So if you can sort of change and undulate the colors, modulate the colors, you know, that really helps a lot. And you can even go in and get some darker darks and maybe along the tops here and there, not everywhere. Maybe a couple of areas along the tops of the mountains here. Like that. And we're having fun. Now that's really the goal I had, was to get this mountain in here and make it not extremely dark, but you can kind of see that's getting, you know, much darker than our first wash. So now we have that. What we can do next is get in some more darker darks along the shoreline here. So I'll add in some more of that orange and brown, and maybe some of the blue and purple too. Maybe a touch of like that. Let's see how that looks. So now we'll do some more distant mountains here. Shoreline. And the thing is to be really careful that we don't go off. We want to keep that line really, really straight where we drew it when we started. Because if we go lower than that line that we drew in, then we're going to be sort of below the boat. So we want to kind of keep that line close to where we first created it. And that is about there. And then, can we get some more blue? Make it a little darker if we can. So I'm going to take this blue, I'm going to add some water to this blue over here with my brush. Let's see if I can get a darker dark here. Some more blue with a little bit of water mixed in there, brown. Okay, looks better, a little bit of orange. A little bit of purple. Okay, I think that looks good. Then I dry off a little bit of that paint. I have a little too much paint on there. I would even go with a smaller brush. So I'm just going to rinse my brush off here, set it aside. I'll go with a smaller brush now. So this is another thing, really fun. We change up our brushes if we need to. If we're doing a smaller, fine bit of work, let's do a finer brush, a smaller brush, I should say. instead of trying to tough it out and just use that one brush the whole painting. That can be a problem. Although it's nice to use one brush if you can. Like sometimes just use one size brush for the whole painting and the largest brush that you can to get the painting done. But in this case here, this is pretty detailed, so let's keep that like that. All right. Okay, that is it. If we can do anything else, we might make a smaller ship over here, maybe. Maybe this is a smaller boat here. Maybe this is a tugboat in the foreground here. Like that. And as you can see, this is really the fun of watercolor. We kind of got this done quickly. The only thing left, I would say, is let's add a little bit of smoke for this one boat here, this larger ship, which is like a giant fishing vessel. We'll take some titanium white and add a little bit of smoke to that. It'll add a little bit of, interest into the painting. Okay, so we'll come right back and do that in just a second. I just want to let that boat dry first, and then we can put a little bit of smoke in the smokestack of that boat. All right, so I'll empty my water bucket once again. Since we're going to create some smoke, probably better to have some fresh, clean water in my water bucket. And I'm going to use some titanium white. And I'll just take some of the paint, the titanium white here. Put that right there. Add a touch of yellow to that, just to warm it up a little bit. Actually, probably better to actually add some purple and brown to this. So I'll use some purple and brown just to get this a little bit in blue. Blue would look good too. Yeah, kind of smoky, kind of blue maybe might look good. I'll rinse off my brush again. Add a little bit of blue there. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I get some of that titanium white. And then I go right where the top of the ship is here. And I just go like this. And just do some kind of some smoky effects like that. Rinse off my brush. Add a little bit of water, maybe even splash some water on there, like that. Splash a little more water on top there. Like that. If you think you went too much with the smoke, you can lift up a little bit with a tissue or paper towel. You could twist it a little bit like this to lift up a little bit if you think you've added too much smoke, but I think that looks good. That. And that's fine, just a little bit of a add some mystery to that painting a little bit here. I'll add a little more. All right. Okay, we're going to come back. We have two more to go, two more compositions to go, and let's take a quick break and we'll get started. All right, so now we can actually have some fun. Let's create a lighthouse what we'll do is we'll try to key in on maybe some nice three-dimensional quality here. So we'll put the lighthouse in the distance. We'll keep the shoreline close to the bottom of the composition. So let's do our shoreline like this. The ocean, actually. So that'll be our ocean, about 1/4 of the way up. So if you can imagine 1/4 of the way up, or if your rectangle is 6 inches up, 2 inches up would be a quarter. Or actually 8 inches. So if it was 8 inches high, 2, 4, 6, 8. So you could just take a measurement if you wanted to. Let's see what this is. This is, right now I'm working with, for this square, or this rectangle, this is actually, wow, let's see, 4, 5, not quite 6 inches. But in any case, about roughly a quarter of the way up is good. And then what we'll do is we'll create the lighthouse here in the distance. So we're going to have some mountainous areas first, like this, down to the water. So this is going to be like the ocean with a rocky coast going down like this. Then over here, and remember too, at the end of this video, I'm going to put all of the paintings on one at a time and leave them on for like 30 seconds each. So this way you can hit pause and paint each one of them individually as you would want to, whenever you're at your own leisure. So I find that that's really going to work out well for everybody. So in this over here is some coast area here with some rocks and mountainous outcroppings. Okay, so now you see we sort of have a nice, again, 1/4 of the way up on our sheet of paper or our rectangle. We have our ocean horizon line with our coastline, and then we're going to keep it real simple. We're going to keep our lighthouse in the distance back over here, so we don't want to make this lighthouse. You could use a ruler too to create the lighthouse. I would do that. Can't hurt. When you create a lighthouse too, you could, to keep it really to perfection, you can draw a perfectly straight plumb line like this with a ruler. So you don't want to be having any kind of angles, just straight up plumb. You take that and you do it with a ruler, right? You create that with a ruler like that, very faintly though, just so you can see it at home. Then from there you take 2 lines on either side of that straight, perfectly straight plumb line. You make 2 lines, one on either side of that, with a slight angle like that, and that gives you your lighthouse. Let's see here. Let me find some paper. All right, here we go. Where's some pens? Oh, we got a pencil over here. We use this. So sort of like this. We draw the first line like this. Lightly though, but I'm just going to draw it darker so you can see what I'm actually doing here as far as the idea. So then once you have that perfectly plumb straight line like this, then you'll always notice that the lighthouse itself is on a slight angle. Sometimes more or less, but usually it always has an angle to it, like so. And then you take those 2 other lines like this, and that's how you can get a really nice, beautiful, slight angle on either side, sloping this way and this way, by drawing that line first, that straight plumb line right in the middle. But it's only so light, barely visible to you only when you're in your studio drawing this. And then once you have that straight line, that plumb line, and that of course you can do that with your T-square. You can rest your T-square on the bottom of your paper like this, and then you'll always have a plumb line if you're using your T-square like that, going across, right? And then you can just create your lighthouse from there. But you'll always have that really nice bit of angle on either side, which you're looking for. Sometimes they're a little bit more steep of an angle, Sometimes lighthouses are a little bit more like this. You know, like that. Basically, they're cones, a cone shape, cylinder cone shape. But that's how I figure you can get a real good result with your lighthouse construction when you're doing this here. So here again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to take the lighthouse, make my plumb line, my first line completely perfectly straight, plumb. Then I'm going to take it and go on each side of that plumb line. I'm going to go with a line on each side with just a slight angle or a taper to it. And then I'll make the top of the lighthouse. And then the cone shape on top for the top of the lighthouse. And that is good. And since it's so far in the distance, you don't really have to worry too much with fine details. We're just going to, you know, do a quick lighthouse here. And there's going to be a small building right next to the lighthouse there. And that should be good. We're going to have fun with this. And again, let's make this more subtle. We're going to do again some, this one we're going to do alla prima. So we'll do the lighthouse first with the rocky coasts, and then we'll just add some wash to it. All right, so we'll be right back. We'll just take a quick break. All right, let's get started. Again, we said we were going to do the alla prima method, which is we're just going to go in with the darks first, the coastline, the lighthouse. Then we'll do our lighter washes with the sky washes. Let's do something different. I'm just going to take some of this, a little bit of that black and brown. We'll keep this really subtle. I think I have to change out my water, especially when you use titanium white or any kind of white in your paintings. Best to always empty your water bucket when you're finished, your water pail container, and also clean the palette. Unless you want something, you know, if you want some kind of like pastel-y looking, chalky looking washes, you could leave it in there. That's fun to experiment with too, by the way. All right, got that there. Fresh, clean water, check. Okay. Tissue. Dry off a little bit of the brush after I rinse my brush. And I'll just mix up some of this, like, we'll do some blue here too, again, like this here. Okay, so very subtle. And we'll create the lighthouse here. And the coast all at the same time. Mix up your colors, change them, but it's just a subtle thing, right? Because we're looking at this and we're not using a lot of colors here. Like, we're not using very high intensity colors. We're just going to leave this kind of like monochromatic, right? Almost like a black and white photograph or something like that. We're not going to use too much color. I just want to show you how really good something can look, even if it's just a little bit of color to it. Just a little bit of the blues and the browns. And I'll rinse off my brush, dry off the brush to keep the brush dry, basically. And then I'll just, now I can go and get a little bit of paint. Okay, so that's our lighthouse. And we could be painting into the light. So if you want to think of it that way, as the sunlight is the light is in front of us, you know, the sunlight is in front of us shining towards us, so we're kind of seeing like the silhouette of the lighthouse and the mountains too, and the like that. And that is really looking good. And the next thing we'll do is let this dry, and that is it. Let that dry, and we will use a larger brush, and we're going to step up our brush size too. We'll use a number 10 round brush. Number 10 round brush, just to get a real quick, fast bit of wash on our paper, and we'll show you how you can really safeguard yourself from having problems with disturbing what we've created already here. So we've created all this lighthouse, the rocky coastal line here looks really good. We don't want to like have tons of water on top of this flooding into there and disturbing all of that. So we'll show you exactly how you're going to avoid that next. Okay, all right, so we'll be right back and we'll get started. Okay, here we go. Perfect way to keep your original washes that you have here from being infiltrated by water. If you're going to do your next wash over the top of this, is simply just to go around it with a damp brush. So I took this brush, put it in water, and then I just, you know, checked off a little bit of water on a tissue so that there's not a ton of water on here. And then I take a damp brush and just go around the lighthouse like this, and I keep myself like 1/8 of an inch of a barrier around the lighthouse like that. And as well as the shoreline here, this rocky coastline, I'm just painting some damp water onto this paper. Clean water, fresh clean water, dry off a little bit there. Just a damp brush, doesn't have to be too much water, should be just a damp brush actually, not a lot of water. And yeah, you just do that. Paint some fresh clean water over the top, keeping it about 1/8 of an inch above the coastline and 1/8 of an inch around your lighthouse. And then you can always go in and gently paint up to your lighthouse when you're finished with your sky wash. And that's it. All right, now let's get in and get some of our blue. But before we do that, let's wet our sky. Okay, doing that, I'm just going to wet the sky a little bit. Not everywhere. And again, you can't get any better than just letting the watercolor do the work itself. So right? Look how good that looks. And then we can darken it up here a little bit. So usually, oh, well, you know, 90% of the time when you look at skies, the upper portion of the sky is always darker, and then it gets lighter as it trails down like this. And that is it. Okay. Like that. If you could just like that. And then maybe the water's a little darker. Let me add some water to the not a problem if that happens. And we just go back to what we were using, blue. I think we use a little bit of brown. And again, we're not trying to be too smart or fancy. We're going to let the watercolor do the work. Like that. So if you can always think of it as your watercolor paints and your water that you're using can be a huge part of your painting process. That's going to actually, you know, enhance the look of your paintings and the quality of your paintings, your watercolors, and you can let it do the work, most of the work. You're seeing these beautiful washes we're creating, and again, we're just wetting the paper first and then just really placing the paint very gently across the paper, and you're getting that wonderful look of watercolor. And that's what people love about watercolors, the water, the transparency of it, the way it looks. You can't do this with acrylics or oil paints. Or acrylics are beautiful and oil paintings are beautiful, and I like to paint all of those too as well. But I think I like watercolors the most because it just has a unique look to it that I find myself I like the best. And that's why we all paint watercolors, because we really enjoy it too. So, all right, we've got this, and this is finished. We don't have to, if anything, we come back and we just, once this is 100% dry, we just go with a little bit of touch up along the tops of the rocky coastline here on both sides of the lighthouse. But that's really it. All right, so we're going to come back in just a few more minutes. We'll finish up with one last composition again. These are, again, 8 of my compositions here are some of the favorite things I love to do in watercolor when I'm doing, anything that's coastal, boats, oceans, seascapes, anything like that, beaches, sand dunes, all that good stuff. All right, so let's come back. We'll finish our last composition, and then we'll, after this last composition, we're going to put each one of these paintings, as well as the first 4 that we created right here, one at a time for about 30 seconds each, so you can, when you're going to start painting these projects and doing these compositions, you'll have plenty of, you can hit pause on your computer, your iPhone, your iPad, your home computer, your desktop computer, your TV, if you can plug in your TV to your laptop or your electronic device. So you have, oodles of ways of taking these paintings and getting them up on monitors, TVs, your home computer, whatever it is, and you hit pause. And usually when you hit pause, there's very little effect to the picture. The picture should look almost as good as when it's running on a video as when you hit pause. Most of the time I look at mine and check mine, and I do use pause a lot of times when I'm working, sometimes from other people's videos that I sometimes want to paint something from. So trust me, it works really good. Try it out. All right, we'll be right back. All right, let's get started with our last painting. We're going to have a lot of fun here. This one, let's keep it real simple. Let's pretend this is you. You're out at the beach. You're going to have your watercolor sketchbook with you, your paints, your favorite music. Maybe you have some favorite food you have stashed away in your backpack, maybe some ham sandwiches or whatever you have, your favorite beverages. You're going out to the beach to do some painting. So just pretend we're out at the beach, and here we are. We're going to just do a quick I'm going to do a chair like this, basically almost like a square, and then a little bit of a smiley face over here like this for the back of the chair. Okay, and then the chair is going to come down here, and it's low in the sand like this, so we have some legs in the back, and then we're going to have a couple, you can make like a little bit of an X on the bottom of the chair. That'll be the bottom of the chair, the cross bracing for the chair. So you basically make an X, and you're just drawing a quick rendition of a beach chair, like that, real simple. Then you're going to draw some shoulders here, like so, and then just a simple head here on top of the shoulders. Basically like a sphere, a round circle. If you have to adjust the size, whatever, you just, you get the feel for what you're doing here. You say, all right, I need that. That's the shoulder. Yep, that's the shoulders. And then we have some arms here in the bottom of the chair. There's a little bit of there's some arm arms to the chair over here, and you're here, you're going to paint. You have your favorite t-shirt on the beach here, and that is it. Then here, you know, the water, the ocean is over here, out in front of you. Okay, and you're relaxing, have a good time, and then maybe you have your duffel bag over here. Maybe you have a beach towel over here. You're going to go swimming in a few minutes. And that is it. You're going to have a fun time painting this, okay? So we're just going to keep it real simple. Let's do a quick figure on the beach, real fast, real simple. First thing I'll do is just go in. I'll get some of that brown for the hair. Orange, brown, orange. A little bit of blue. Darken it up a little bit. Okay. Nothing fancy. Let's start out with the head. We're doing alla prima painting here. So this is going to be alla prima. All at one time. I'm starting with the darks. So we have the head there, and then some orange and yellow and some red for the flesh tones. Some yellow. I rinse off my brush, dry it off on a paper towel, and see how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty good for the flesh tones. Okay, we have some flesh tones there, maybe where the elbows are. So you're just going to do a quick bit of information on here. Some flesh tones here again, which were red, orange, a little bit of yellow, to get yourself a nice flesh tone like that. And you're all set for that. You can create with a smaller brush. Maybe we'll create some blue striping for the chair. So I would say that's fine. Let's do that. Like this, and just like this. Nothing too fancy. Blue stripes on the chair, like that. Okay, the bottom of the chair is there. There's going to be some shadowing back there, but right away you have some fun. The light will be coming from this way, so maybe there's some shadowing over here, like so. So you can add some shadow, maybe even some purple, like that, a little bit of purple, like this. Okay. You get some shadow on there, and then you can also lift up that shadow a little bit with some paper towel, like that. There's some shadow over here, and on this sleeve of the shirt over there. And again, you're having a good time with this brown for the bag. So we're going to have a bag over here with some brown, and the shadows over here like this. So I rinse off my brush, dry off the water so that it's just a damp brush, and then we kind of lighten it up over here. So it's darker over here on this side. Then we can take some more of that darker brown, maybe add a little bit of blue to it. And we have the bottom of the bag here, maybe some leather on the bottom of the bag, maybe it's a canvas bag. Okay, like that. Maybe some purple for shadow. Light's coming this way, shadow should be over here, like that. Maybe we put a small bit of shadow under the handle here. But all the while here, we're just having a fun time creating just a few ideas. And maybe we have an orange towel here with some red. Two there, some red stripes, some blue. Like this, some shadow there. Alright, so we have interesting colors, shadowing over here with the chair, like that. Shadowing underneath the cross bracing of the chair. And it's a little bit darker on the bottom of the chair here. So I'm just darkening it up over here. And that's it. Let's leave it as it is. Let's not go with too many details, right? We're trying to get this one done quick and have fun with it. And we're going to have some ocean here. Let's do our distant ocean. So let's do our nice distant ocean like this. A little bit of brown. Touch of green. Blue. Okay, we'll get that distant ocean out there like that. We want to keep it straight, so if you want to, you can put some tape across it. Never too late to just take some tape. I grabbed some drafting tape quick. Take it, put it across here. You can do these type of things quickly on the fly when you're painting. No one says you can't change that line where the ocean line is. And that's the whole point of it. You can work quickly and not worry about it. And then we'll take our tape and press down. See if I can kind of press down here a little bit. I'll still get a better straight line if I use this tape. And this tape doesn't really, that's the problem with this tape. Sometimes drafting tape doesn't have enough tack, enough glue on it to make a really good adhesion to the paper. So that's why I'm going to go with a better tape. This is frog tape. You can get this at any Home Depot, Lowe's, big box stores. You can order it on Amazon. Frog tape it's called. And this is tape that'll stick really well to your paper. And I'm not quite straight there. Let me get it straighter. There we go. And then you can just press it down with your brush. Like that. Actually, that's all I need to do is just quick cross like that. And blue, we need the blue ocean color. Like that. Right, there we go. Can't go wrong with that. There we go. Then, wow, are we going to go for it? Yeah. We'll use some of that really bright blue. Okay, I'm going to add that a little bit everywhere. And there we have the ocean. Waves coming in. A little bit of splashing. Let's not get too close though with the water. Let's make sure we have plenty of room for some sand. There we go. So if this is you or I, we're sitting here painting. We don't want we don't want to have the water crashing into our chair and all of our belongings here. We want to make sure it's. This is the sand. You can get a little better with the sand if you do a little more with the brush like this. You get finer sand textures if you use another brush like that. But you can see we've created a really enjoyable figure. So you're doing some figure work here, nothing complex at all. Very simple. Anyone can do this, a beginner painter. If you're just starting out in watercolor, there's no reason you can't do something like this. It's very simple, effective, and the last thing we'll do is the sky wash. And I'll empty my bucket one more time, and fresh clean water, and we'll just get a little bit of sky wash in here. And the first thing I'll do though before I do that is add some water to my paper for the sky. So some fresh clean water first for the sky wash, and then let the water color do the work for you. And I'm going to use the blue that we started with. And that is it. Let's see. Do we have to try to lift up a little bit of paint? I don't know. Let's see. Maybe a little bit here. So I'll try to lift up a little bit over here. So I take my tissue and then just fold it up. Fold it up and make a crease on it like that. And then I try to lift up a little bit here. And there we have it. Hope you enjoyed this series. Hope you'll subscribe so you don't miss a thing. We're working here every week, week after week, month after month, and year after year on our watercolors. So if you're just working along with us whenever you can, whenever you have time, everyone's busy. Absolutely, people are, I know many of you are busy. You have you have families, you have work. You have to, many of you probably have jobs, you go to work, you're trying to get in your time on your watercolors. The best time is just to join us. You'll always be working along with us week after week again, and month after month and year after year to improve on your watercolor skills. So let's keep working together. Okay, and we'll see you on the next video. And again, in just a second, we're going to have all of the paintings here one by one on camera for you so that you'll have those. You can work from them. Okay? All right, we'll see you on the next video. Great working with you. Happy painting. All right, everyone, here's the paintings. We'll just go one by one from the first one we started right on through to the last, okay? Enjoy, and we're going to see you on the next video.